Hello, I'm Ryan Carter. I'm the Dungeon Master for this campaign I have been creating. It's called the Errigold Farlieong War. It is our first campaign we're playing, and we're just getting into the YouTube. So please like and subscribe to show your support for what we do and our channel. Thank you. So this is going to be something I've been wanting to do for a minute, which is just a recap essentially of the campaign before we started filming it. And so we'll just get right into it. It's kind of, we'll just treat it as a story. Chapter 1. At Northwood Inn in the town of Ironhaven, which is a sprawling large city of blue-roofed castles and a large church dedicated to the word. The air is clear and bright on this particular day, and several odd events set our story in motion. After being banished from his tribe of barbarians, a dejected and vengeful furball named Leo roamed into the Northwood Inn to relax and collect his thoughts. On the same day, a fallen celestial named Darian Lestat entered a portal from the Shadow Realm, which led him back into his own world, although it was a region of it unfamiliar to him. He exited the 6th Church of the Word in Ironhaven through the front door without ever having entered it. This was the same church Lorna had run away from only days before to find a new home in the Northwood Inn, where some guests were allowed to stay in exchange for labor under the judgment of the owner, Corin Northwood. Lorna remembered nothing of her life before she was commanded to live in the nunnery to serve only the interests of the Church of the Word. The elf, Lorna, awoke to a note from Corin. Lorna needed to hire bodyguards to assist her in a job given to her by the innkeep, Corin. Lorna hired these 2 wanderers who happened to be in the common room at the inn. They agreed to aid her on a journey to Pine Grove, one with an angelic demeanor, Darian, and the other, a giant furball named Leo. The group set out with their carriage to be delivered to Corin Northwood. A 2 days' journey. They moved slowly along the old miners' road south out of town. They entered the Poison Lake late at the night after passing through the pear forest and made camp before Leo gathered pears and some mushrooms for their food. And as Lorna suggested, Leo was able, at Lorna's suggestion, Leo was able to convince a giant frog sleeping nearby to let them travel across the lake as they rode upon the frog to the dark ruins which enticed them nearby. A small island on the lake and this decrepit castle in the moonlight drew them near. Once inside, the wooden door that still locked the ruins, the adventurers encountered a massive skeleton minotaur. Leo charged after the possessed bones. Darian blasted them to pieces with his righteous magic, and Lorna nervously fired arrows from the doorway, which she had unlocked. After a brief and gruesome encounter, Leo took the monster's great battle axe. Searching the ruined castle, the crew discovered a lone necromancer and looted his study after dispensing with him. After a short rest on the island, Cor Wright, a knight of the word, discovered what they had done and rewarded the group for their efforts and returned them to the shore in a small rowboat where their horse and cart awaited them. And the party headed off down the road in the midday, the pear forest and its fresh scent fading behind them as they stride onward into the dusty fog of the burnt wood. Yes, the burnt forest and the burnt wood. And the party headed off down the road in the midday, the pear forest and its fresh scent fading behind as they stride onward into the dusty fog of the burning wood. They walk for about an hour, their path becoming more winding all the while, only to be stopped by a pair of fallen trees blocking the road. Leo begins clearing the path. warning his allies to ready their bow, sensing a trap lying in wait. Chapter 2. As Leo, the Firbolg, was moving the roadblock, and a spotted snowy owl soared towards the adventurers and their stalled carriage, dropping a letter into the Firbolg's hands. Leo read this note, which was from Cor. The owl awaited the Firbolg's short confirmation reply that Leo asked Lorna to write for him. See you at the big rock on the third day when the sun reaches Thry. Leo finished clearing the roadblock, and just as the party was about to leave, a rumbling is heard from the burnt forest. To the south, clouds of dusty fog form, and a giant troll appears above the tips of the charred trees, swinging massive arms at the party. The troll's disgusting long fingers grabbed Darien, and Lorna escapes its grasp with a quick dodge. The troll retreated with its prize and massive strides back into the burnt wood. Leo sprinted after them, and Lorna followed, the elf completely blending into the ashen landscape. At the camp of the giant troll, Darien cast a protective ward on himself, and the troll angrily retaliated by throwing him to the ground near its cave and campfire, then attacking with a strong bite, which Darien was able to deftly dodge and roll to relative safety. The giant, still within close proximity with the celestial warlock, Lorna channeled her anger and cast a fire towards the staggered troll. Leo sprints forward towards the distracted giant troll and kicks the back of its knees, toppling the giant into its own bonfire. The troll rises out of the flames, cinders dropping from his palms as he stared intently at Leo. The pair of giant kin exchanged taunts in their ancient tongue before ripping into each other with teeth and iron. The troll rips into Leo's chest with its disgusting fingernails, causing blood to pour from him. Leo begins casting an angelic blast that sears the giant's flesh, and the troll falls backwards, slightly bleeding. Seizing the opportunity to escape from the savage beating, Leo disappears into the dust of the ashen forest around him. The troll rises again to claw at Darien, the giant troll's claws wounding him badly until Darien bled unconscious. The troll begins to tie up the unconscious body. Leo and Lorna consider their options under the cover of dusty trees, surmising the damage inflicted on the giant troll. They notice it has many wounds, slowly healing over time. The two decided on their plan. Then Lorna sent out one last flurry of firebolts, and Leo managed a critical blow that would topple the giant into the bonfire where it remained. After great trouble, they were able to stabilize the wounded celestial Darien. The group discovered an elf bound and gagged inside of the cave behind the bonfire. Lorna removed the gag from the elf she recognized as Corin Northwood. He promised to reward them for saving him. Before Lorna hesitantly untied him, and he stumbled distraught towards the bonfire, crying that his brother Egard had been burned alive and began to have been eaten by the troll. Corin begins reaching into the fire for what remains of his brother, pinned beneath the giant. Lorna held his face and offered some comfort before suggesting that she should inherit the inn. Corin only dismissed her. Darien searched the cave but found nothing save carcasses of animals, elves, and piles of dirty cloth. As everyone made camp, they retrieved the horse and carriage from the road, and Leo finished the last of his mushrooms, itching allergetically all the while. Worth it, the Firbolg declared. In the morning, the band set off towards Pine Grove slowly again, eventually leaving the landscape of ash behind them as they entered the region of huge blue spruces known as the pine forest. The scent of pine filled their lungs. As Leo asked Corin if he knew the nature of the burnt forest, but Corin only replied that he had not noticed. Leo thought the elf's mind was likely preoccupied elsewhere. After a day's journey, they arrived at a small settlement of Pine Grove in the late evening. Occasionally, white clay houses were nestled among the trees of the town square. Corin instructed the caravan to locate the inn at the riverside. The party noticed the large building and made their way towards the river. Darien burst through the wooden doors of the inn, shouting for a round of ale at Corin's tab, and was greeted by silence in a room of empty tables. A thin old elf appeared behind the counter on the far side of the room. The innkeep provides drinks to the party, and they all got lodgings for the night. Darien and Corin introduced themselves and shook hands. Corin went to bed after promising to repay them all for saving him in the morning. Darien sold the Minotaur skull to Thoranius, the innkeep, for a handsome price of 10 gold. The entire party was surprised and pleased with this development. Thoranius offered Darien to kiss his ring finger, but he refused. After Darien has become quite drunk on a large barrel of ale, an elven patron walked in and spoke with Darien over a drink. When Darien informed the elf they had come to town in search of money, the elf informed him that there were bounties and jobs posted at the town hall and pointed the drunken Darien on his way. Leo followed in secret. Crossing the bridge and knocking on the wooden door of the town hall, a quiet voice eventually called to him to enter. Darien approaches and spoke with the decrepit elf, and to little avail, as the mayor spoke in what Darien deemed to be nonsensical ramblings, such as, "If we have hitherto drawn our notion of duty from the common use of our practical reason, it by no means inferred that we have treated it as an empirical notion, and here moral sense, there fear of God." Darien was eventually pointed to the wall behind him where bills were posted. Darien found 2 flyers. One, a series of disappearances, 10 gold. Any information concerning the continual disappearances of local elves will be rewarded. Putting an end to this travesty is our highest priority. 2, local mischief, 2 gold. Determine who is responsible for the removal and defacement of the road sign at the edge of town and bring them to the town hall. Darien informed the mayor that the troll, which they had killed that morning, was responsible for the death of several elves. The mayor summoned 2 guards to investigate the claim. Darien informed them how to locate the troll's camp, 2 days' journey, and the guards went on their way. The elven mayor gave Darien 10 silver for the lead. Before returning to the inn, Leo stopped Darien and asked if he had noticed Lorna assisting them at all when they fought the massive skeleton minotaur yesterday. And Darien replied that he believed he saw her fire a few arrows, and with this Leo seemed satisfied. Back at the inn, Lorna won a round of cards with Thoranius, earning the pot of 10 silver and a card for her to build her own deck. The band headed for the rented beds late into the night. Chapter 3. Before going to sleep, Lorna opens the scroll which she stole from Corin Northwood earlier, revealing a cryptic map. Knocking on the door to Leo's room, he helps make sense of the cartography. Where there's an X marked here and another there, I think this is Poison Lake, and I assume Pine Grove is around here. The pair were amused at the map and wanted to investigate immediately, but feeling unusually tired, they made for their rooms. Leo and Lorna awake bound and gagged in the back of a covered wagon barreling down the road to an unknown location. The traveling party is helpless, but Leo manages to kick Darien, who also wakes up. The terrified and tragic Corin Northwood is in this predicament with them. They're all tied up in the back of a carriage-covered wagon. They don't know where they're going. Leo realizes that his weapons have been taken, but he retains a small dagger concealed in the side of his boot. The party tries to maneuver themselves to reach the knife, but it is at this moment that the wagon bumps to a halt, and the shadow of the driver in front of them hops off his seat and begins chatting with a growling man. Eventually, the pair open the back of the wagon, revealing themselves to the helpless pair to be Thoranius, the innkeep, and a fat, trollish man. Thoranius is paid a large bag of coins, and the trollish man summons 2 guards to handcuff and lead the hapless victims into the massive city walls of a strange land. The music of string and wind instruments fill the air inside the city. A short clay teepee covers this section of the city, and up ahead gypsies dance for coin on the side of the road. Elves shuffle around. A strange assortment of people gather, eyeing the newcomers as the party is brought before the wooden block of a slave auction. Further down the street, a large crowd is gathered and loudly cheering for a public execution or torturing by a mage, leveling an assortment of spells at the accused one. One man is heard chanting, "Fire! Burn him!" The travelers realize the severity of their predicament as desperation sets in. All three acting at once, Darian creates a distraction as Lorna attempts to run away, but is stopped by a guard. Darian lets a wild sidekick loose, knocking another guard over. Leo attempts to disappear, and begins to run back the way he was brought in, trying to summon his innate magic. Knocking through the crowd on his way, one of the guards begin chasing him without skipping a beat, following him down the alleyway and closing in. Leo notices him drawing close and drops to one side and attempts to alter his appearance to that of a simple beggar, using his prologue magic. But it is at this moment Leo realizes none of his magic has worked. He's been visible the entire time. He is tackled and returned to the slave block by a guard, shortly. After a hot day standing on the slave block, Corin Northwood is purchased and taken away, and soon after another pair of prisoners, Leo and Darian, are sold to a wealthy elf who takes them to work under the supervision of a slave or guard in the fields just outside of town, picking apples. Darian attempts to cast spells repeatedly, but to no avail. The orchard is a 60-foot expanse with similar fields on either side, and beyond, a staggering fence, an occasional barricade of the second city wall. The pine forest is seen to the south, and the burning flame of the burnt wood to the northeast encompassed most of the view. Darian is taken to have not been working very hard and is promptly whipped by a guard. Darian runs up to the guard and does a wild sidekick, knocking the armored slave over. A couple of guards run over to the scene, threatening Darian and restoring the order. Darian says a prayer to the angel who guided him through the shadow world and returned him to the light only several days ago. Great mentor, please get me out of here. Lorna is sold to a royal elf who took her to work in the kitchens of the palace where she skins potatoes. She managed to smuggle a knife in the kitchen, and then she was ushered upstairs to a bedroom in the late evening, and kissing the hand of the royal elf who purchased her, she learned that since she is an elf, she will be able to earn her freedom in time if she is obedient. Leo talks to a human slave who he is working with near in the fields, asking why his magic would not work. Before, the boy says, "They say the king of Ozar is a powerful sorcerer who has power no other magician can hope to stand against." Darian asks the boy if he knows of the city of Farlieong, but the boy only says no. "I've not heard of it. I was born as a slave in the city, but it is not so bad if you don't make trouble." Eyeing Darian, the slaves in the field are called in and are marched to their sleeping quarters, filthy mats in a heavily guarded, large wooden cabin. Leo asks to go to the bathroom, and a guard escorts him out onto the lawn behind the city wall. Lorna sneaks out of her bed at night, carefully descending the marble and gold leafing of the grand staircase. She escapes through a large front door of the palace where two guards stood waiting. She convinced them to escort her to the stables, insisting that it was urgent and she needed a horseshoe for her lord. She even manages to convince one of them to lead the way. Why would it look weird? But of course I shall. Once inside the stables, Lorna made a run for it, escaping out the back of the stables and sleeping in the field until daylight. Inside the cabin, just as Darian watched Leo leave, he tried to flee out of his room. Spying a guard down the hall, he ran and tackled him, clutching at his neck, and begins to choke him out. Another guard runs down the hallway after Darian and tackles him off of his ally. The pair of guards take the unruly slave down to the dungeons, throwing him. As Darian retaliates with another wild kick, the guard staggers and chuckles and leaves the prisoner to be tortured by whipping, finally saying, "There is nothing you can do to me on this plane that is worse than what I've endured." Darian is later tortured with a hot iron branding, a crossed sword near his frog-kissed freckle, and persuades the tortured to let him go, promising that he would submit before he is taken back upstairs later the next day. Lorna located Leo in the apple field after a great day of stealthy searching. He is whispering to the trees, "If you can get me out, I'd appreciate it." The two were delighted to meet again. Lorna tells Leo, I think I met the king. I think he liked me. He seems sympathetic to our cause. Maybe we could appeal to him." Lorna managed to sneak with Leo back into Leo's room with Darian, where they met Darian. After Leo advises, she smears some mud on her face to help her blend in. The group is happy to see each other again, and they catch up but there is not much time to share. They think of an action plan. They know that Corin is still enslaved, but they want to seek vengeance on Tyrannus, which means escaping the city and their enslavement. Darian realizes they were suckered out of that Minotaur skull. He paid a handsome price, knowing he would just steal it back in the morning. Lorna describes the map that she had showed to Leo. Lorna suggests that they try to convince the king to release them, or maybe kill him and take over the entire city. Darian shares his history. He was banished from his house because he was next in line for the throne. Darian plans that they go to the fields tomorrow, throw apples, start a slave fight, and use the confusion to escape. Leo instead suggests that they get out tonight, attack the guards with cloths and knives. We can gag them and strip them of their armor. It won't fit me, but you could wear it. None of them had any of their gear except a few knives and a makeshift club that Darian had made out of the legs of a stool in the room. He used the club to attack the guards, and he made another club from one of the remaining legs. He used the club to attack the guard earlier, and he made another club from one of the remaining legs. Leo again clarifies his plan. We gag one guard, the others won't know, then we just walk out. Darian seemed skeptical, saying, I don't know. From what I've seen, they will find us and chase us down. Lorna suggests that if they do subdue the guard, we can wear the outfit as a disguise. Leo and Darian trade the knife for the makeshift club. Leo says they must wait for the guards to doze off. Darian says, we can all just reach out and grab the guard, but the problem is that other guard. Doors are 10 feet away. There are many guards. Lorna asks if she could just start screaming, he's hurting me, help, help, he's hurting me. They discuss plans further. They try to convince one of the guards to enter the room and assist one of them who's pretending to be unconscious on the floor, but the guard refuses, telling them instead to throw him out and she'll be taken care of. Darian scratches his cheeks so that he bleeds, and Lorna convinces a guard to look at him, but the guard does not care for the hurt slave and shuts the door. Lorna draws her knife. Leo opens the door and throws Darian out, who is pretending to be unconscious, but lying in wait to stab the guard in the neck who goes to check on him. And as he plunges the dagger into his throat, he says, fucking elves. Leo rages, kicking open the door again and slamming the guard to the ground with his club. After a gruesome encounter with 5 guards in the hallway of a wood cabin, one guard flees into the city, and the band of adventurers escapes through the apple orchard behind the barricades in the city, or behind the barricades into the burning wood. They do encounter a single terrifying, massive slave guard with spiked armor and a mace and a flail. And they have a wicked battle with him, eventually fleeing into the woods. The flames of the forest flaring up near them, their feet kicking up ash as they run south, away from the great plumes of the burning woods to the north, following a river Leo said, "Let's go back to the Riverwood." They tried to find their bearings, and noting a river, they followed it and the coast back towards the inn at the riverside. They figured from their memory of the map, which they had seen earlier, that if they followed the river, it would lead them to the inn. Leo tested the water and found it safe. They floated without harm, and it would cover their trail. They did not feel safe sleeping in the woods, so they continued all through the night, slowly becoming exhausted. Once they find the inn, Darian says, "Loki, I think we solved the mystery of the disappearances. They all plot their vengeance, which seemed close at hand." Leo changes his appearance to that of an elf and enters the inn. Leo plans to make a trade deal with Thoranius and then kill him quietly in the back room. The crew quickly attacks, Thoranius not recognizing Leo until he removes his disguise, and Thoranius cries to send a thundershock from his wand, diving for a staff behind the counter to summon the undead Minotaur head from upstairs. But the crew quickly dispatches with Thoranius after the skull sends out several blasts of magic, and they knock the wizard unconscious, and the skull deactivates. They take his staff, and the red glowing eyes of the undead skull fade as it falls to the floor. Darian tackles the old elf behind the bar, and they tie him up. Darian asks, "Should we sell this bastard into slavery?" The crew barricade the door and make their sleep for the night in the upstairs room after Lorna and Darian drink some ale from the storage of the closet. The team collects 15 gold, 2 silver, fine elven robes of red and ale. Darian and Lorna awaken very late the next evening after sleeping for many hours. That day, Kor returns to the inn. He brings with him 10 freed slaves from Ozar, one of which is Rowland, the young wizard, and Corin has 2 attendant knights with him. And Darian departs the next morning in search of his hometown of Farlieong to confront his brothers for teleporting him to Hell 18 years ago. Leo takes Thoranius to the town hall and is paid by the mad mayor for his successful arrest of the villain, who is proven to be behind the disappearances and is taken to a cell in the dungeon. After shopping, and Roland purchases 20 gold worth of health potion from the elven magic shopkeeper, the group sees Kor receive an owl and asks them to accompany him on a quest to save his commander from a group of goblins who captured his troop. They head out south and soon find a fort they suspect as a location he was taken. The young wizard Roland travels with them now. After exploring the castle, they manage to slay the orc leader and save Abraham, the Scottish commander, who leads them deep into the cave and to save his other men. They rest at a fountain. The group slays 2 orc at a campfire and save the young monk Tredicor, who is a member of the Knights of the Word, or a traveling companion at least, and is commanded by Abraham. The group journeys on and meets a goblin shopkeeper who sells them a health potion and a map of the underground made by his brother. They also rent boars from the goblin and ride off. 10 gold for the map and 5 gold for each boar. The group ends up at the spine of the world with no direction after traveling underground for many hours. And at Abraham's suggestion, they head back into the cave and find the stone slab door using the map, which leads on the far side of the tunnels near the Fort of Goblins. They end crossing a bridge and dislodge the statues that spit acid. They defeat the suit of armor after saying light instead of word, and then they enter the observatory above the dark temple. A massive temple with orcs bowing in front of a black, tall robe, ceremony of candles and pentacles. The golden lock prevents their entry into the chamber beyond. Lorna tries to stab the lock with the dark flame dagger they got from the orc, and it lodges inside as it grows. But she later removes it in the midst of the battle. They witness the sacrifice of the 2 remaining knights. The dark flame rises up from the ritual below, as the room has already grown dark from the ritual's completion. A dark flame, somehow deeper and darker, yet brighter and illuminating the room than the darkness that surrounds it, in a white outline that beseeched the pit, and it takes them over, burning them as with a whip and burner covering the floor, and finally peering into the eyes of each of them, reaching out and grabbing their hearts in a flaming hand. Many of them pass out as they try to fight against it. Tredicor runs. The two remaining knights, Cor and Abraham, defeat the fragment of the dark flame which had attacked them all. And they bring the other three back to the Pine Grove. Chapter 5 is where Tredicor slept in the grove of glowing mushrooms not far off. After escaping the flame, he hid against the wall, and in the morning he departed from the cave, fighting off 3 dogs, one at a time, after almost sneaking past them all. And he rested at the fountain. And he read the runes, but did not offer his heart's prayer, only drank and slept. Chapter 6. And then Tredicor went out the front of the fort, the goblin cave, and ventured north on the main road after finding the fork. Tredicor followed the tracks of the dragged body again, and the boots that resembled the Knights of the Word who he traveled with before, after they visited his monastery of the First Word in Farlieong, the last kingdom of man. He saw little of Farlieong before his crew was captured by goblins and taken into the caves, and eventually freed. But his band was captured, including his commander Abraham, and he was taken in isolation for a time, blindfolded and lost in the caves and now in the woods. Suddenly he was jerked back into the underbush by a strange figure and silenced. The man, as he watched as a large band of orc and goblin passed, the strong carrying swords and a large concealed cargo carried on a pike between 2 strong orc. The ranger told Tredicor he would be safe now, as he uncovered his mouth, and the two talked for a time. Glaforin, the half-elf with cut ears, revealed himself upon Tredicor's investigating to be a runaway from the grand elf city where his father was a wealthy slave owner, and his mother was a human, and Glaforin despised the elves, but he swore his life to the woods after being rescued by the Knights of the Word. A cave looms behind the roots of a tree where he rested, but Tredicor decided to venture with Glaforin for a time south, as they headed in vaguely the same direction, for Tredicor planned to return to Farlieong. Glaforin went to seek the counsel of the Elder Tree in the Elder Wood, and Tredicor would return home to his monastery, and he knew it was southeast, although it was far. He did not know the territory around. The two travelers went south and briefly glimpsed a griffin, but Tredicor snapped a branch beneath his feet and scared the beast away. As night began to fall, they decided to press on, the elder tree in question being only a couple hours away. They came upon a goblin hut, and Tredicor barged in looking for the goblin. He saw 2, a large orc and a small one at his side. They tried to intimidate him into running away, but Tredicor merely sat down at the fire calmly. The smaller goblin came to investigate, licking him and running to his orc leader. The two communicated eventually, learning that they were both looking to return to their community. Although it was through simple grunts and groans, Tredicor drew a map in the sand and showed them the way to the goblins was north, and they went on their way. But the young goblin returned to thank the boy and gave him 3 gold coins and self-referenced himself as Kelp, and told him the way to his community was south, for the only human settlements left were in Farlieong, since the war with the elves left great losses for man. Glaforin returned later that night, seeing that Tredicor planned to rest here, he offered to stay with him. After a few days of resting, they would venture on to the tree which lay nearby. Chapter 7. On the first day they did not speak much, but they harvested some plums and olives to eat. On the second day, Glaphorin scared off a couple of wolves that noticed their encampment. On the third day, Glaphorin tells Tredicor more of his history, of his father at Errigold and his mother, who was a slave, and how he was banished for trying to protect her from the abuse of her father and her owners, and how he, when he tried to return home, was sent away to servitude in Ozar, and eventually freed by Abraham. After Tredicor imparts his own tale, the two travel into the clearing beyond the woods, where the land opens up and the mountain ranges on either side of the valley eclipse the sky. A river runs through, and on the far side a dense and dark woodland of twisted olives and ancient trees covered in thick foliage await them. The elderwood is misty and ominous even in midday. As they approach one especially large and ancient tree, Glaphorin tells Tredicor to remain back a few feet. As he runs up into the trickling stream in the rocks and the roots of the elderwood, Glaphorin speaks to the tree, and Tredicor can hear the echo of a fairy voice in his mind, but cannot understand the language. However, Glaphorin responds to its call. In conversation, he seems worried about the health of the tree and asks what he can do for it. He introduces then the traveler Tredicor to the spirit, and the elven word for friend is recognized. Upon leaving the tree, Glaphorin informs Tredicor that he has been sent to investigate the burning woods to the north, but he would accompany the monk as far as the edge of the forest to point him on his way to the human settlements to the south. However, Tredicor elects to accompany his newfound ranger friend on his new quest. Glaphorin mentions that, should he change his mind, he has a favor to ask in locating the grey wizard Ornicus, or in fact, if he ever returns to the land of man, since the elder would also request the aid of the grey wizard, but he has not returned an owl in many years. On the way back, they begin to lose their way. The journey out of the dark woods seemed to be taking much longer than the way in. As they stopped to try to consult and find the direction, they were attacked by two large spiders. Tredicor noticed one spider and reached fast enough to redirect the arachnid's pounce. It landed near the ranger, who was currently being bitten in the neck and shoulder by another spider. The monk threw a fist at the spider, knocking its eyes out of place and sending it limping back into the dark trees. The other spider lunged forth from where it lay, and the adventurers stepped to the side, allowing it to miss. Before they pummeled the beast together, killing it, Tredicor investigated the spider bite on the shoulder of Glaph and discovered that it was a magical ailment that would heal if they got out of the dark wood, and would worsen as long as they remained. They got separated then, both thinking they had found the right direction. Glaphorin, of course, was correct, and he was saying that he had been there 1,000 times at least. Tredicor walked off, however, into an isolated strip where trees grew on all sides and boxed him in. In the deep silence there, a snake began to wind around the trees to one side of the boy. His gut turned. He imagined the giant reptile lunging out to strike him as he was frozen in place, but lost a sanity check here, and lost a sanity, going from 8 to 7. And the dark snake finally drew forth a strike. He saw clearly that it was not a snake, but a giant centipede. It nevertheless reached out aggressively with dagger-like sharp claws to pierce into Tredicor's shoulder, drawing blood. Instantly the monk reached out for the claw and uppercut, breaking the exoskeleton clean off. When the bug scuttled around again to bite, the monk countered with a jaw-breaking maneuver. The lone monk called out to his companion again, and quickly they were together. They made haste out of the woods and back to the clearing where the river runs and the mountains hold the valley. They made camp at the goblin's tent again, and in the morning they were on their way to the secret village in the pine grove. At the inn at the riverside, they met the human knights, to Tredicor's great surprise. Abraham awaited the bed of a dying elf, covered in a white veil, Lorna. Tredicor recognized the burn victim of his friend from the dungeon who had likely saved his life from the goblin horde. Abraham joked with the monk that he was so glad to see him. Now he could return to the monastery one day without being a failure for protecting him. The old Scottish gentile, Abraham, told them of the washing wilt, a rare herb that smells of sulphur. The elven healers from the town told them might help to save the burnt explorers who lay dying and in critical condition, in a coma, unresponsive. Tredicor went off to the bar downstairs to eat soup and drink ale. The knight behind the counter helped him, and a local elf walked into the establishment and looked very confused, muttering to himself about the missing inn owner and the strange knights at the door. Tredicor became even more concerned and suspicious of the knights at the inn at the riverside before he went off to bed in a room specified for him by Abraham, the knights now holding control of the inn for themselves and using it as a safe haven, as part of their secret road from Ozar to Farlieong. And you have made it to the end of the video. Thank you very much for tuning in. Please like and subscribe to show your support for what we're doing. And we're new to YouTube, so we could really use the support. Thanks.